Hi, guys. Welcome to the How I Raised It podcast, the show where we get an inside, unfiltered look at how real entrepreneurs and VCs raise capital for their businesses. I'm your host, Nathan Beckert, and today's episode is with Liza Rodewald of InstantTeams, a platform that provides remote jobs for military spouses. It's a very clever business. In this episode, Liza talks about her experience going through Founder Institute, raising capital remotely as her military husband was stationed in Hawaii, tips for building resilience, tips for pitching Tiger Global, and much more. If you're tuning into this podcast, learn how to raise capital for your business. Be sure to check out Foundersuite.com if you're a startup, or FundingStack.com if you're a VC or advisor, to get an awesome collection of tools for raising capital. They include a massive investor database, a CRM to manage a raise, a virtual data room to run due diligence, plus much more. Pitch deck hosting, investor updates, email tools, all kinds of good stuff. Last but not least, if you enjoy this conversation and think someone else would too, please share it with them and hit that subscribe button to get all our latest episodes. Thank you. Now sit back and enjoy this chat with Liza.
Welcome to How I Raised It, the podcast that goes behind the scenes with entrepreneurs who've raised capital. We uncover the tips, tricks, and techniques they use to get investors to write a check. Strap in and turn it up.
Hi, welcome to another episode of How I Raised It, produced by Foundersuite.com. Today I have Liza Rodewald coming to us from North Carolina. Liza is the founder of InstantTeams. How's your day going?
My day is going great.
Well, let's go right into it. What is InstantTeams?
So InstantTeams is a customer experience marketplace where we build customer experience teams for brands with military spouse talent.
Give me an example. So if are we talking about large Fortune 500 companies or smaller companies are using you guys?
Yeah, we work with large enterprises. So for example, like Aflac is one of our customers. Mid-market companies, we work a lot with technology companies. So even if you're a brand that's smaller and just starting your customer experience journey, we can help build those teams. Or if you're looking to augment or supplement an existing team you have, we work with companies like that. So we're pretty flexible.
Give me a scenario. Let's dig into it a little more, right? I'm Aflac. What am I doing? I'm hiring a team for a holiday seasonal work, or is it more, on demand? Kind of what's a good use case?
So we actually do both. So we do seasonal work. So sometimes brands will come to us when they have peak season. So for example, we do a lot of insurance in the insurance space. So when open enrollment comes open for insurance, we'll spin up teams that help walk customers through the enrollment periods. Holiday shopping, retail, e-commerce, they have those surges. So we're a great partner in surges, but we also do a longer term engagement. So for example, we have a team of military spouses that work for one of the largest cybersecurity companies, and they do the data breach detection. So if you think your data has been breached, you call our team, we walk you through the process, make sure that it's an actual breach before it escalates up to the engineering team. So kind of that front line, anything that's customer facing, all the way from entry-level customer support to higher level account management, demos, those kinds of things. Those are the types of teams we build for the brands.
Interesting. And as a brand owner or as a brand, can I come on just bring in a team for a month? Is it a longer term thing usually, or how's it usually work?
Most of our shorter engagements are somewhere between like 2 and 4 months time frame. But longer terms, we have some contracts that are 2 to 3 years long. So we can definitely play in either space.
And then talking about the other side of the equation, the pool of talent. So it's entirely made up of military spouses. Is that correct? Or is it also some ex-military, or what's
so there's the primary focus is military spouses, because our mission is to improve the financial wellness of military families through military spouse employment. Through that, we do have veterans that come through, as well as civilian counterparts, because we're an equal opportunity employer. So military spouses aren't a protected class. We can't just hire military spouses, but 90% of our talent pool are from the military spouse population.
Interesting. And I guess this is a way to both augment their income and just become a job as they're moving around, right? I mean, is that kind of the hook here?
Yeah. So I'm personally a military spouse. I was a software engineer when I became a military spouse myself and had a completely remote software company. And so when I got into the military community, every spouse was like, "Hey, how are you working? They're like, can you help me?" And so I'm like, what's the disconnect here? And it's just the frequent moves, right? When I became a spouse, I moved 6 times in 7 years. So if I was like climbing a traditional corporate ladder, it's like having the ladder constantly pulled out from under you, right? You need some source of stability. And the military spouse community is really looking for something they can keep with them while they move, because everything in their life changes. They're looking for like a solid place to stay consistent. And so that's where we came in with our solution.
Tell about, how you started this, why you started this.
Yeah. So, I know there's probably a lot of entrepreneurs listening to the podcast and watching us. And one of the main things that you need help with is like good talent, right? When you're scaling, when you're trying to build something, how do I find high quality people? And I did that with my software company. And at the time, I tried to use some other tools to do that. And I was like, man, these just not working well. I'm not finding like really good people. And then when I moved into the military community, and there's like really good people that were my neighbors, like we're talking people with master's degrees, doctorate degrees, 60% of them have bachelor's degrees. And, companies just didn't know that they were untapped, that they were out there. There was like no way to connect those. So just being an entrepreneur, I was like, I think there are ways to connect the companies that I know that need great talent to this community who doesn't know how to pull these things together. And this was way before COVID, right? We were remote first. We started in 2016. So creating those remote work opportunities and connecting the dots for everyone was really, a problem that I felt I could help solve.
So when did you start? How long has this been around?
2016.
And so maybe talk about the chicken and the egg scenario. Did you recruit a bunch of military spouses and then go pitch some brands, or did you get some brand? How'd you actually get it going?
Yeah. So since it's a marketplace, it's always challenging coming up with the two sides. So we did start with the military spouse community because I was a military spouse. My co-founder is also a military spouse. And so we started putting messaging out like, if we build this, will you come, kind of scenarios. So this is what we're thinking about doing. How many people are interested? And we just got inundated with people signing up for our just pre-launch page. So we knew we were in the right realm on that side. And then we started figuring out, okay, what is the business problem we can solve? And how do we give those opportunities to the military spouse community versus, how do we get the jobs to the military spouse community? So that's kind of how we went around trying to find the product market fit.
Yeah. Interesting. You talk about like customer facing roles. I mean, what are all the categories of things? If I wanted to, build a team and hire through you guys, what all can I do? Can I get software engineers, or is it more customer support and that sort of thing?
So we try to stay away from extremely technical roles because that's a challenge for our community because they move like junior engineering roles. Nobody wants a remote junior software developer. So we try to stay within, entry to mid-level roles within the customer experience lifecycle. So account managers, any kind of back-end office work, customer-facing roles, including customer support, tech support, sales, those types of roles is kind of where our sweet spot is to work with brands.
Yeah. And how do I put this? I mean, there are other talent marketplaces out there like Fiverr and things that are, taking their different fees. What's the business model around this? Are you marking up an hourly rate, or is it a different type of?
Yeah, so we have two. You can direct hire from our platform. So you can come post your job, source from our community, use our marketplace and take those spouses and put them on your payroll. Or we have a straight outsource role that would be like similar to Upwork, but it's like a productive hour rate. So you just pay per hour that the person is working for you.
Yeah, cool. Any you don't have to share this if it's sensitive, but any numbers in terms of like how many spouses you've placed, or what can you share in terms of size of the marketplace?
Yeah, so this is probably about a year-old stat, so we need to update these numbers. But about a year ago, we did the calculations, and we've given $40 million of payroll directly to military spouses. So quite a bit of good social impact.
That's awesome. What was the hardest part? And we're going to get to fundraising in just a second because that's the focus here. What was the hardest part of getting this business going?
Oh, all kinds of hard parts.
Which is the definition of a startup. It's all hard parts.
Yes, it's all hard. There's nothing that just comes easy to this. I think for me as an entrepreneur, it was really one of the lessons that I learned in being able to focus the business. Because when you start off, you have like this big vision of all these things that you want to do. And really and I can talk to this when we talk about raising money too, by narrowing and focusing the vision on like this customer experience marketplace versus just a general talent marketplace that we can do everything and be all to everybody, was both the best thing that I did and one of the hardest things I did, because it's hard to say no to things when you're an entrepreneur. You're like, but I can do all these things, but you can, but can you scale all those things? Right. And so narrowing that down and keeping the focus and keeping the vision focused has probably been one of the bigger personal challenges.
Interesting. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I like on this show, a lot of the best businesses are almost kind of obvious in hindsight. Like, and I feel like I kind of put you in that category, right? Like, hey, there's all these military spouses out there that have skills, degrees, talent that aren't being put to use. Let's pool this and sell it, right? I mean, it's like kind of an obvious business model, right? But it's like, I know it's not.
Yeah. No, the people say that all the time. Why hasn't anybody else done this before? And, I think it's also finding the right product market fit, finding like where the business need itself is, that really is key to solving that challenge.
Yeah. So I have to ask, are you still running this as a military spouse, moving around? Like, is the headquarters moving every 6 months?
Well, my husband is still active duty. So my co-founder's husband just retired. So now they're a little bit more stable. We've been fortunate enough to be in North Carolina for 3 years, and he transitioned to another job here. So we should be here 3 more years. So this will be the longest I have been any one location. So I have we put a co-working space that's free to military spouses here. And that's where I have my office here in North Carolina. So we plan on staying here for a little bit longer.
That's cool. Great.
Yeah.
Well, I love veterans. So, it's cool. Just thanks for helping veterans, right? And helping the active military. Let's talk about raising money. So you start to, pool these military spouses, you start to get some contracts going. Talk about raising, I guess, that first round. Did you bootstrap this in the early days, or did you?
Yes, we did. I still ran my software company about a year into starting InstantTeams, because we wanted to make sure that, I wasn't quite ready to give up my personal income yet, to make sure that we found like a solid product to build on. And so I ran my own software company still, and my co-founder, she worked as a consultant for some Silicon Valley startups for the first year. We bootstrapped to revenue. And then we really took a step back, and I'd actually bought the InstantTeams domain probably 15 years ago. So when I had the idea of like just scaling my own teams, and then I had told my co-founder that we actually started off with a different name in the beginning. So we were called Mad Skills when we started. So once we kind of got to the point where we think, okay, this has scalability potential. Like this is more than a lifestyle business. This can be a big company. We decided to rebrand it as InstantTeams, my kind of original, more software focused concept, and to raise money. And so neither one of us had rich relatives, friends and family that could put in money. So we were like, okay, how are we going to do this? And we had a mentor / advisor out in California. And he said, I think you should go through the Founder Institute program to start building your network. That way you can meet, investors and things like that. And so if you want to go out and raise money, I think this would be a good next step for you guys. So I actually enrolled in the Founder Institute program out of DC. We were stationed in Virginia at Fort Lee. So it was like a 2-hour drive one way. And I drove up to DC and I did that program for 3 months in order to start building the network. And then as soon as I was done and I was graduated, I'm like, yes, ready to raise the money. We got orders to Hawaii. And so I was like, well, this is great. Like from a lifestyle perspective, I'm like, how am I going to raise money while I'm stationed in Hawaii? Like it's a very remote area.
That's got to be every military person's dream, though, to be stationed either Hawaii or San Diego, right? Isn't that
right? Yeah, it's a gorgeous place, but I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be even harder. Now I'm even more out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from there, I just, we went through the program. It was a great experience. One of my mentors was like, okay, it's going to be important for you to get into the right ecosystem in Hawaii when you get there. And they knew a woman named Shanoa Farnsworth, who runs the Blue Startups program there, which is co-founded by the Tetris founder. And he's like, you should meet with her as soon as you get on the island and kind of, gauge the scene and get involved there. And so I'd probably been there 4 weeks, and I met her for coffee. And we just had a great conversation, hit it off. And she's like, well, today I'm actually going to the Hawaii Angels luncheon, which is the investment group there. She's like, do you want to come as my guest? And I'm like, yes, I do. So that kind of started my trajectory of raising that initial round.
Yeah. Okay. So keep going with the story there. So you're in Hawaii, you're networking with the Hawaiian Angels, and
Yes.
how'd you get the first external money in?
So while I was kind of working the Hawaii Angels network, the Founder Institute gave me an introduction to Rightside Capital, which is a micro VC in San Francisco, and pitched them, and they actually wrote me my first check. And so once I had that check, I went to the Hawaii Angels group, and I did the group pitch. So if any entrepreneurs have ever gone to angel groups, I did the whole group pitch, and then didn't really get much traction from that. So then I started following up with each angel individually. I had a lead at that point. So I had a lead investor, I had a lead check, and it was from someone in San Francisco. So it kind of gave me a little bit of a stamp of validation there. And so I closed each angel individually, outside of the larger group, to fill up the round, and did the round that way.
Interesting. So let's even get into the details a little bit more. Rightside Capital, I think I know those guys. They're very kind of data driven, right? I mean, aren't they almost like fill out this form with all your metrics and we'll make a decision? Is that how it worked with those guys, or was it more?
Well, since they were a direct intro through Founder Institute, so they do deal flow through them. So I had kind of a referenced intro. And so I didn't go in from a cold, like fill out data form entry, more of an intro to the group and to talk to them myself. I never actually went in person. So I never met them in person until a couple of years later when I came to San Francisco. So we did the whole deal through Zoom, like we're doing now. Had a couple of meetings, and they were pretty quick to decision. We did have customers and revenue and data at that point because we had bootstrapped. So we weren't pitching just the idea. We already did have some customers and some proof of concept in play when we raised the initial round.
Got it. And then the rest of that was all through Hawaiian Angels, or is it a mix of?
Yes, and there was another VC that syndicated out through Rightside.
Well, how much was that first round?
600,000.
Okay, cool. All right, so there you are. You just closed 600K from some I bet there's some interesting people in that Hawaii Angels group, right? Because I mean, like, think about the people that kind of migrate to Hawaii. It's like a lot of entrepreneurs that made money and now are kind of, I bet it's an interesting
all
group.
ages, all kinds of demographics for sure. But they've been very supportive, even to me now. Of course, I send out my investor updates, and they're a very supportive group of investors.
All right, so let's keep going with the story. You got 600K in the bank, building the business. Are you moving around? Let's go to the next round, raising the proper seed round.
Yeah, so that one, I was still in Hawaii. I ended up going through the Blue Startups program to kind of continue solidifying my relationships there. And when I did that, I met Patrick Lee, who is the co-founder of Rotten Tomatoes, and he was the entrepreneur in residence. And so I got to work with him, and that's really where the focus came in. So when I pitched the Hawaii Angels, we were more like, a military spouse talent marketplace. And him and I sat down, and he's like, okay, let's go over your customer traction. Like, where are you seeing, the most traction? Who are they hiring? How many of them are they hiring? And so him and I sat down and kind of did this matrix. And what I found was most of the customers that were hiring, like volume and like continued customers of ours, were doing roles that were somewhat customer facing. And what I found through that process is, because I have US citizens located globally in every time zone, they speak multiple languages, they have all these unique lived experiences, the product market fit for them was they were amazing at interfacing with our brand's customers, right? They could connect with people. We can do 24/7 with the US workforce, which no other company really can do that.
Yeah.
Without tapping into like this type of a resource. And so that gave me a huge market advantage. And so at that point, when I kind of discovered that, and I changed my entire pitch deck, this is where that comes in like hard as an entrepreneur, right? Because you're like, man, if I just change this whole pitch deck to like customer support, which is what I did at the time, it felt so limiting. But when I did that, and I went in to start raising my next round, when I went in front of a VC group and said, like, I'm building customer support teams out of military spouses because their retention is high, their unique lived experiences, everyone's having a problem keeping with attrition in this space, they immediately understood the business problem I was solving. Instead of asking me like, well, how many military spouses are there? And is this a scalable company? Like, all of those questions kind of fell away because they were all trying to solve for this problem within their companies, right? How do we increase our retention and our customer support side? This is a big problem for us. And then I have a solution for it. And yes, it also does good by giving military spouses jobs, but the business case was easy to see. And that made the raising money process so much easier and changed the questions that I got.
That's really interesting. Sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's amazing. That's a great epiphany for folks. And I feel like I even had that with when I was raising money for Foundersuite, like just kind of narrowing in on, like, we had this broad vision for Foundersuite originally, and then we sort of narrowed it in on the fundraising piece, and it just, everything sort of clicked, you kind of know it, you feel it, right? It's like, yeah,
right. And then the questions get just so much better, right? Instead of like, I don't really understand what you're doing, or I don't understand how this is beneficial to companies, like, they got more detailed. Like, okay, if you had X amount of money, how fast could you scale this side? How fast, they just became more intentional and really changed the way we were able to raise completely.
It's great advice. But it's hard to give that advice because you have to sort of iterate your way there, I think, for a lot of founders, right? You know, and yeah,
I wouldn't have started off with that knowledge because I wouldn't have known, right? Like, working with the market where that fit really was. But then once I found it, being disciplined enough to stay the course is really important.
Okay. So let's talk about raising that seed round. So that was a venture round, right? And how'd you identify the right fit investors and, take us through it?
Yeah. So obviously finding the lead is always the most important thing. I actually got a warm intro through a veteran that just reached out to me randomly on LinkedIn and was like, hey, I know this other veteran-led VC fund, I think would be interested in what you're doing. And I started building the relationship probably 6 months before we actually raised money in that capacity, which I think is really important in how you raise this. Like, this whole time, Founder Institute, everything, I am building relationships. I am keeping them warm. Even after I raised the $600,000, I sent out monthly updates to everybody. Anybody I talked to, anybody that wrote me a check, like, they got a monthly update. I made sure that network was really warm. And I know, Nathan, I mentioned this to you before, but I did run that whole process and I used Foundersuite to do it. Which
love it.
I love that you said that you focused your product, because that's why I used it. Because it was the one place I went, and then my brain was just focused on fundraising. That's all I'm doing here. I'm not trying to answer emails. I'm not trying to sell something else. I'm just managing my investor network. And so having that level of focus was really helpful. So I put all the angels and managed warm intros from that system, which made that a lot easier for me on that side. So I went in and had a couple of conversations with Squadra, made it to kind of pass their entry level screening and to the actual managing director, which was Guy Filippelli. And then we started talking money. I actually had 2 potential leads that felt like Squadra would be the best fit for us going into the next round just because of the network. So he's a West Point grad, had a lot of connections on the military side, defense side. And so just seemed like a good fit for us. And so he led the round. We had another VC come in and take a majority portion and then filled the rest out with existing angel connections and syndication from those 2.
Got it. So Squadra was the veteran-led venture firm. They led it. And then what was the second venture firm that came in?
Bricks Capital.
Also veteran related or no?
No, but they do have like a ethos to invest in like veteran companies, but not veteran-led.
Gotcha. Cool. How long did that whole process take?
I would say start to finish, that was about a 6-month process.
Yeah. And I love that because I'm telling founders this constantly, doing the monthly updates, right? That's great. Mm-hmm. How large, if you can remember, was your distribution list? Like, how many people were you sending monthly updates to?
At that time, it was probably pretty small. It was probably like 30 or 40 people.
But you're
So
doing it religiously, which is great. You got the military discipline to do it every month.
yes, I really do think it was key to my success, because I can, and we can get into the next round, but I can like trace them all back to the origins 100%. So
Let's do that. Let's
okay.
trace the dots, connect the dots to the next round. That's great. I think that's good.
Okay. So then it was time for the Series A, which was going to be a decent sized round. So we ended up raising 13 million in that round. So was it sizable? Also took me probably about 4 months total to raise that. But I had, at that point, when I went out to raise my Series A, I had 80 warm intros from my existing investor network because I had kept building those relationships, sending my emails, telling them what I'm going to do, and then doing it. Super important in that. And so that just felt really good as a founder, right? Like you had all these people willing to open their network to you. I don't take that lightly. I know from my perspective, after raising money, having people come to you and ask for intros is a big deal when you actually do it. So having 80 felt, was really humbling to me, and just a, testament to the great people I think that are in my network. I got advice early on, take money from the right people. I think that's really important. All of my investors have been amazing to work with. So I've had really great experiences there. But I got a call on a Friday night about 8 o'clock at night from Dave from Right Side Capital. And he's like, Liza, I've got an intro for you. And I need to make sure, when you talk to them, you're going to pitch the big vision that you've told me that you're going to do. And I'm like, Dave, I got it. And who are you introing me to? Who is this? And so he gave me an intro to Tiger Global, which ended up leading the round. Obviously, a big investor in the space. But he came from, I got to Dave through Founder Institute that I started way back when in DC, right? So that Series A lead check from Tiger came directly from that relationship that I built by going through the Founder Institute program, who then connected me to Dave, who then connected me to Tiger, right? So it is definitely a path of like starting to build that network and keeping it warm and making sure like you're building relationships along the way, and trust, right? Because they don't want to put just anybody in front of their network. And so building that trust is really important. And just a lesson that I saw play out in real time. But I pitched Tiger. I spent 4 months pitching, right, and hearing no's. I think I counted at least 75 no's along the way. So it's not like I just got on the phone with Tiger day one of pitching and boom, I had a $13 million check. That would have been nice, but that's not how it works. So it was an exhaustive experience going through. But it's also finding the right investor. I'm a marketplace. I'm a little unique. There's a service component to it. It's not pure SaaS. So getting into the right investor profile was also important and tricky, right? So not all warm intros were relevant. And some of them led to intros, right? So I tried to take as many meetings as I could because I knew if that's not a path, there might be another angle, like even within their own fund. Like maybe I'm not the right person at the fund to pitch, but I know which department you need to go to and who you need to talk to, and navigating it that way.
Were you mostly targeting like marketplace investors because you are kind of a marketplace, or more like HR investors? I mean, there's a couple different ways I could see approaching.
Yeah. Well, I really didn't know where I fit exactly. Right. So I did pitch to like HR tech, tech-enabled service type, marketplace. There's not a ton of like open marketplace investors that I could find at that time where they list that kind of as a profile. So that was a little tricky to figure out who was in charge. But that's the great thing about the intro that Dave gave me to Tiger is they were investing in marketplaces, the people he introduced me to. So it was like just a great like direct fit for me.
Really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about pitching Tiger Global. So if you're not familiar with Tiger Global, they're like a huge fund that kind of came out guns blazing a few years ago, investing a lot of the biggest, hottest deals. What was it like pitching them?
Yeah, it was a really easy pretty seamless experience. The main thing, I mean, they're very, very data driven. And so we have done a great job at keeping our data clean and easily accessible. Like I spent a lot of hours on our data room before we ever even went out to market for raising money. So having all of that really important. I worked with a fractional CFO at the time and made sure that our finances were, our models were good on, good investor models so they can easily pull, because they pull that data in and they have their own proprietary systems they send them through to see, okay, signals. Is this a good signal or not? Once you pass that test, then they really want to talk to customers. So they spent a lot of time talking to my customers to figure out, where the secret sauce was in the company and through that. So that was, a pretty good experience. I had a competing term sheet as well to lead the round with a different investor, much different kind of profile investor. So we had to kind of weigh which direction we wanted to go. One would be very hands-on, board seat, all that good stuff. Tiger actually doesn't take a board seat in their smaller investments. So it was going to be more of a hands-off, more of a just money coming in the door. So we had to kind of weigh those two against each other and ultimately went with Tiger to lead the round.
Yeah, congratulations. That's great. Boy, we've covered a lot. What have we missed? What advice, this is one question I always ask, what advice would you give your younger self if you're doing it all over again, or any other generic advice, or another way you could skin it? What advice would you give to military entrepreneurs, veteran entrepreneurs?
Yeah. Well, I think where there's a will, there's a way. And so there's always, I raised money as a non-traditional founder, located in a remote environment pre-COVID. I did it all remotely. So I think finding the right investors, honing in on your story, making sure the pitch is understandable and easily communicated, and building your network, like some of the keys to my success. What I would tell myself, if I could, like my younger self, I would say, hey, after you close a round, give yourself some time. Because I feel like I didn't pause after, closing such a big round of money. You just feel that instant, like execute, go, 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 go. And I feel like those first 3 months, I made some decisions that I just didn't fully think through. Like I had the plan, because you make the plan and you raise the money on the plan, but like give yourself some time to like recover from the fundraising experience, and then move into execution. I would tell my younger self to pause, maybe for like a month.
I like that. Give yourself time to recover. Sometimes sounds weird because I'm a guy, but I always sort of liken fundraising to like giving birth. Like it's traumatic and it's stressful, and I like that. Give yourself time to recover. Yeah, it
is. Especially, I was closing the round and I got COVID, so I lost my voice at the end of the negotiation period. So I'm on the phone trying to squeak through like term sheets and everything. So besides just being physically exhausted, it's mentally exhausting, right? Because I've spent the last 4 months doing nothing but pitching like 4 or 5 times a day, going through calls. It's very mentally taxing. And I didn't give myself kind of time to pause and be like, okay, let's recover. Let's get clarity and then start moving again. I wish I would have done that.
Interesting. Any advice for military entrepreneurs? And you go to the military is pretty regimented and structured and stuff like that. So I imagine it can be a bit of a shock to become an entrepreneur if you get out of the military. I'm totally guessing here, but like, what advice do you give military founders? Anything?
Yeah, I think mostly there's a lot of military focused VCs and things that you can easily network, but not to be afraid to go outside of those systems to start building your network outside of that. Like the Founder Institute, those incubators are really great places to build a network outside, and you'll find veterans within those things sprinkled in. But the tendency is to kind of stay a little bit more insulated within something that's more familiar. And so not being afraid to break out and be part of, Techstars and Founder Institute and 500 startups and those kinds of things that are just a little bit maybe outside your comfort zone, but can really help, build the network and those connections outside of the military community.
Do military founders need to adjust their mindset coming from a rigid, structured military into entrepreneurship, which is chaos? or maybe that helps. I mean, maybe that rigid like discipline really is a good thing. I don't know. Well,
Yeah. Well, I'm not a veteran myself. So I've always been in the entrepreneur space and married to a veteran.
right.
I think from what I've seen in the ones that come out, like they just have a lot of grit. And that's one of the things that you need as a founder, right? Like the stamina, the ability to keep going. I mean, most of us, you win just because you don't give up. And that's a trait that a lot of, military personnel just inherently have based on their experiences. So I think while the quick changes can be, different, it's not, I mean, the military is structured and regimented, but they can get deployed where I'm at in 24 hours. So they're used to quick movement, quick environments, like pivoting, solving problems, doing things like that, which are all traits you do kind of as an entrepreneur.
That's a good point. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else? I think we've covered a lot here. Anything else you want to say?
Yeah. Just if you're raising money, don't get discouraged. Keep going. There's lots of no's. There's lots of, times when, you just feel like you're beating your head against the wall. But then if you just keep going, there's the breakthroughs on the other side. I remember when I got my first check from Right Side, I literally just fell out of my office chair onto the floor. And I was like, thank God, like finally there's a breakthrough here, right? So just keeping going and not get discouraged. And then also listening to feedback. This can be hard as a founder, but really truly listening to it and hearing it and changing and adjusting what you, kind of sift through, because you don't listen to all the advice, but taking it in and truly trying to process it to figure out what needs to actually be implemented and what you can just kind of throw away because you just get a lot of that. It's just something that you be open to. Don't be so hard-headed that you miss maybe what the market's saying or signals are telling you and be able to pivot from that.
Yeah, good stuff. All right. If people want to learn more, it's InstantTeams.com. And is there a minimum, like can a startup go there and hire just one spouse, or is it, what's the,
Yep, no, you can hire just one on the direct hire side. On the outsourcing side, we usually like to do teams of 2 to 5 as minimums on that side if you're building like customer experience teams. But if you just need one person to augment your team, we can definitely help. InstantTeams.com, and there's a button there where it'll connect you straight to our sales team.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
I like this concept a lot. I'm already thinking about like, maybe we should explore. We've got customer people all over the world, which is good and bad, but it'd be great to have some U.S. military spouses doing our customer support too. I like it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much. This is great. Congrats on the big round with Tiger Global, and we'll catch you after your next round, whatever that is.
All right. Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Liza. Bye.
All right. Bye.